What has inspired you to get involved working in equality and inclusion?
It's a really simple train of thought for me, and it's just two things, and it really is people and impact. And I feel those two come together really nicely in that you make an impact to help or support other people to transform communities, change people's lives in some way, shape, or form. To make an impact, you need people. So for me, getting into inclusion really was understanding that for us to advance in specific areas, I need to make an impact. And that's really the sole reason of getting into the role, I suppose.
I think the big thing with equality and inclusion is that I don't think that's something that as a leader was available as a job role 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
How important is it to have equality and inclusion leaders and diversity teams, especially now in today's society, and also with the branding of the Leicester City Football Club as well?
It's really important to start off with. I think given the role and responsibility that the football club has within the community, what we do is always going to be front and centre. Going back to May 2020, it's been mentioned many, many, many times, the murder of George Floyd. That for us was a marked moment, and will probably go down in history as that moment that really began to shift the conversation around equality and what that looks like, not just within society, but also within the workplace. When we are a football club that has such a large reach, for me, it's really key that we are having these conversations, or are in those conversations where we're talking about how do we include, fans that come on a Saturday at 3 o'clock, to those that work back office, those that engage with us, whether it be online or remotely, in whichever way, that people feel I have some affiliation to this football club. So the importance of us talking about it is really key. And for us to be part of the conversation, not just within the football club, but within the inclusion space is very important.
Yeah, definitely. And having those conversations behind the scenes as well is really important. I think the big thing is that sometimes we worry about saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. So how can we be able to openly have conversations without the fear of getting it wrong about equality and inclusion?
I encourage people to get it wrong, because no one is perfect and we will get it wrong. But what better place to get it wrong in a safe space where you're encouraged to get it wrong than to get it wrong in a place where people feel that they need to tread on eggshells. The term used is psychological safety. How do we create spaces where people feel psychologically, I can talk about this, either my experience from a lived experience from someone who is of a protected characteristic, we all are, but someone maybe has experienced something negative in that light, but equally people talking from their experience on the other side of, I don't really get it, I don't fully understand it. And that is really, really important, that as organisations, but also as community groups, as friendship groups, that we can create safe spaces where people are able to get it wrong, and it's said, that's okay, you can get it wrong, we move on, but there's learning within that.
Definitely. I think it's really good to be able to understand making mistakes is actually a good thing to be able to do, so then you can be able to learn from that and move forward. How do you think we can tackle that barrier of having those conversations and maybe those unconscious bias that we have within ourselves, so that we can build a better community within an organisation or just within your community?
So how we learn is really, really important, and how we learn within our environments is really key, because what that does, it informs then how we see certain situations or respond to certain situations. So I encourage people to take their learning from the day to day, but be open to learn. And what I mean by that is wherever we go, whatever we do, whoever we speak to, take an opportunity to learn something new about that individual, take an opportunity to learn something about that situation. Because from learning, we create understanding. And once we create understanding, we create empathy, or develop empathy. we then have an element of, right, because I've tried to understand this individual situation or where they're coming from, I might not necessarily agree with it. However, I will respect that. And I think those are the beginnings really of how we can begin to move forward in the space of creating an understanding within the work environment.
How can organisations, especially workplaces that don't have diversity and inclusion teams, get serious about diversity and inclusion in the workplace?
I think for any organisation, it's important it starts with leadership. The work that we do in inclusion won't be sustained if leaders aren't involved in the conversation, or at least, driving the conversation, but at least involved in the conversation as well. And it needs to come from leadership. They set the culture, they set an informed policy, strategy, specifically related to the organisation. So whatever workplace, leaders need to be involved. Even in smaller workplaces, I say the same. I think we're now at a place whereby smaller organisations are probably being able to take that momentum a bit quicker and a bit take the momentum of D&I on, because there's probably less infrastructures in place that they need to manage. Whereas with the bigger organisations, there are probably more structures that they have to navigate. But leadership, getting them involved right from the off is really, really important. It's really important that we create a culture within society of learning from each other, but equally we transfer that into the workplace, that we continually learn. And some of the best ways to learn are from other organisations that are either further on the journey in D&I or starting out, because there's always something to pick up or there's something to reflect on.
Culture is a massive one, to be able to get a team together, to be able to share those same values. What are the main things that you would look for in an organisation to go, they are absolutely diverse and they do have inclusion within their organisation?
I don't think anyone's got it, if I'm being brutally honest. We can look at some of the big organisations and we can talk about some of the mechanisms that they have in place. So whether they're focusing on specific people groups, there'll always be something that we can do, and there's always something that we can do more of. I think the organisations that have got it right, in my eyes, are the ones that are still willing and open to learn, but also are willing to take the big risks and really put their neck on the line, take a stand for certain situations, or take a stand for certain causes, and really champion people groups. For me, that's where I find, a bit more life in an organisation that tells me, actually, you have got it right, because what you're doing is you're identifying your own gaps. And you're not limiting yourself by your own gaps, but what you are doing is saying, this is where we're not great, and this is how we can move forward.